founding fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey folks, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. We're always thrilled. We're always thrilled on Fridays, by the way, because that means it's Johnny Cash Friday. I don't know what that is. We got some audio bleeding in. All right, welcome to the program. So we've got a lot of news to get to for you today. We're going to get right to it. I do have to say, I've got to reflect on some stuff. You know, we've been covering the Arkansas General Assembly for a while now. I guess this was week number 5. I mean, technically, I think it's 6, but I think it's 5 when it comes to actual bills and scorecards and everything else. It's I would say I have noticed that it does feel like a different environment down there than legislatures of the past. But I am noticing some things about some committees, in particular the House Public Health Committee. And I want to talk a little bit more about this at 7 o'clock when we start the second hour. But the Public Health Committee, it's the House Committee on Public Health and Welfare, Labor. This committee to me is there's a foundational principle behind, for the most part, who gets put on that committee. There are exceptions to that, but there are a majority of people on that particular committee who are committed to government control over your health care. And I will explain that further at 7, but because of that, the derivative is it is extremely difficult to get any sort of scope of practice bill passed that's going to decrease regulations and give people more choice, give the patients more choice. That is what is abundantly clear to me after going through the first week of Scope Week and listening to debate, listening to the excuses that they will contrive anything they can to have a reason to vote against giving the people, and that's what this is about. They're talking about the profession, and they'll throw public safety in there, but what they're really talking about is they don't believe the people are smart enough to make decisions for themselves if they were given the freedom and opportunity to do so. They don't believe that we are capable of managing our own lives when it comes to using this doctor's service versus this doctor's service, or making a phone call to a doctor to get a prescription or whatever. I'll tell you specifically what happened yesterday coming up at 7, but I just thought that was, it just kind of all dawned on me yesterday. Now, also, the highway tax plan, the highway plan that has tax increases in it, passed the Arkansas Senate, the full chamber, yesterday. We'll bring that audio to you a little later. Interesting stuff about State Representative Dan Douglas. I've been watching him. And of course, he took to the floor last week to speak against the pro-life bill, Senator Rapert's abortion trigger law. He took to the floor to speak against that, still maintaining he's pro-life, but he spoke against a bill that would ban abortion in Arkansas if Roe v. Wade is overturned, with the exception of the life of the mother. And he has filed this week an assisted suicide law, or a bill, assisted suicide bill, which, again, is not pro-life. We'll be talking with a good friend of mine, Mr. Ken Yang, at the bottom of the next hour about this bill, because there's some that's some big implications, you know. Life begins at conception, and you need to protect that life all the way to natural death, is what a lot of people believe. It's what I believe. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Oh, by the way, it is Friday, which means, yes, Johnny Cash Friday, a day where we try to listen to as much Johnny Cash music as we can, while at the same time peppering in the news of the day. The news of the day to me is that governments everywhere, generally, I think this is safe to say generally, have a spending problem. They need to stop spending so much. They need to cut spending. And I think a lot of you out there agree. Matter of fact, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who was listening to the program yesterday. And he said he appreciated, the coverage of the news, letting him know these tax increases at the pump are coming down the pike. And he just, he agrees. I'm probably going to sneeze here in a minute. He agrees that, that governments everywhere, they just as long as they have a taxpayer base, essentially, as long as they have what they consider to be, or it feels like, an endless savings account, which is the taxpayer, to come back to, what incentive do they have to change their behavior? Now, I will say that if there was some discussion of this yesterday, we'll get to that audio. Senator Kim Hammer, who voted against the tax increase for the highway plan, had a few things to say, or questions of Senator Terry Rice, who was running the highway tax increase plan to fund our roads. And he said that this might be putting the cart before the horse, because the real problem, before we take more money from the people, the real problem is that the Department of Transportation, which is in our Constitution, this is a constitutional department, very much like the Arkansas Game and Fish, that they're mismanaging funds. I'm paraphrasing here. Now, also, if you read the Democrat Gazette, they say as much this morning. That, we really need to reform Department of Transportation before we move forward with any sort of tax increase at this point. Well, I guess through the course of, questioning back and forth, having the conversation, Senator Jonathan Dismang apparently has, I think, a couple of bills that are going to attempt to do just that. They have already cleared a Senate committee, the Senate Committee on Transportation, in an attempt to reform the highway department here in the state of Arkansas. So that's something else to consider here. And we'll talk more about this at 7 o'clock. But the highway plan is effectively two parts, from what I can tell. You have the tax increase at the wholesale level, the new tax, that passed the Senate. It's going to be heard in the House Revenue and Tax Committee on Tuesday. And the counterpart to that bill is going to be a plan that's going to refer to the people and ask them to vote to maintain a sales tax for roads, a half-cent sales tax for roads that is set to expire in 2022. We voted for it. We voted for it to expire in 2022, and now they're wanting us to vote to maintain it. There are some people that don't want to do that, by the way. There's some people that find that the fact that the government would not let the half-cent sales tax expire, they find that disingenuous. It's something that fuels the skepticism that we have in our own government when we have promises that are made, or we have leadership that tells us one thing, and then, of course, when it comes time for the tax increase to sunset, they can't do without. They can't decrease their dosage of the opium of legislators, which is your taxpayer dollars. They have a problem cutting back. They have a problem weaning off this addictive product. Speaking of addictive products, did you hear what Governor Blackface did in North Carolina? Oh, he signed a law that raised the minimum age to buy tobacco products because for some reason everybody's freaking out again about kids smoking. Listen, I know kids are not supposed to smoke, but it's the new hysteria. It's back again. Every 20 years, people are, they look at the tobacco rate numbers and surprise, people still like to consume nicotine products. It's just hilarious to me. I mean, there's an uptick because of the technology, because of these vaping pens, and now we got more people that are consuming nicotine. Surprise! I mean, let's sound the alarm, right? I mean, let's turn on the tornado sirens in every community in Arkansas. They look at these statistics, and if they're not continuing to decrease, if they plateau at all, well, the government must do something else to discourage smoking cigarettes or consumption of nicotine. I mean, it's just interesting. I want to know what government program is going to keep kids from wanting to get high or alter their chemical makeup in their bodies. You know what I mean? What? It just seems to me this is something that human beings are going to do. Is that me? I just think for all of human history, right? Drugs in whatever capacity. If it wasn't for the crop of tobacco, by the way, America wouldn't be America. You could make the argument that economically we wouldn't have taken off the way we did. If who was it? I can't remember his name. Was it Ralph? John Ralph smuggled those tobacco seeds he wasn't supposed to have. Is that what happened? Anyway, it's just the whole thing to me is always interesting. Governor of North Carolina, Governor Northam. He's I guess is he in good graces now that he cares about the kids? Yeah, they have an exception for the military. Governor Northam, Governor Blackface. They do have an exception. If you are sign up for the military, you can smoke cigarettes, which is odd. No, I understand it. People are like, well, if you can take a bullet for our country, you can smoke a cigarette. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess I agree with that. Yeah, but I mean, what is the big deal? I don't understand. People are always looking for some crisis, some next crisis to try to solve, and they need the government to solve it. It's just okay. So you're going to be able to vote in this country. Okay, let's say you don't go to the military. You're going to be able to vote in the state of North Carolina, but you're not going to be able to buy cigarettes. It's weird. And then you got these people up in Oregon, these geniuses up in Oregon that want 16-year-olds that don't even have brains that are fully developed. They want them to vote. Okay. That's because less and less people are voting for Democrats now nationwide, in case you haven't noticed. There are less and less people voting for Democrats, and so they need either illegals to be made legal or vote fraudulently. The Democrats now need 16-year-olds who are clearly going to be more liberal because young people are more liberal. Oh, speaking of, let me find this article here because this is a gem here. So you have Governor Blackface signing a ban on people buying tobacco if you're under 21 years of age. And wouldn't you know it, we have a similar bill that has been filed here in the state of Arkansas. Oh, and so get ready to hear about how Arkansans smoke more per capita than other states that we're at the highest, Get ready to hear all the alarm bells. I'm telling you, man. It's the same thing that you've seen with Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the person that started Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the last report I read, she left that group because they became anti-alcohol, and she originally started the group because she wanted to be against drunk driving. But what happened was they did a great job educating people about how dangerous it is when you drive drunk, and people stopped getting arrested in the numbers that they were, and it plateaued, meaning every year there was always just going to be a pretty flat percentage, pretty consistent percentage of people that are going to drive drunk anyway. And that wasn't good enough for mothers against drunk driving. That wasn't good enough. So what did they do? Well, we need the government to be able to do more things like roadblocks. We need more sobriety checkpoints. Well, that's a violation of people's freedoms. It clearly is a violation of people's freedoms. You had one guy down in Florida, one community down in Florida. They were so amped up about getting that number to go down even further that they had a judge standing by at these sobriety checkpoints. This was a few years back. It might have been a decade now. I don't even know. But my concept of time is just horrible. But they had a judge standing by to just, okay, we'll take your blood. Signing a warrant, boom, give us your blood. If you're not gonna blow in our little machine thing. Anyway, this is what happens. We don't want people to smoke. Okay, all right. We think smoking's bad. Smoking causes cancer. Everybody knows this, yet people continue to do it. Why? Why do people continue to do it? What government law is going to just make it illegal? I would much rather have this argument. Now, I wouldn't be for making it illegal because I think that's ridiculous, because I think people should have freedom of choice. But I mean, you don't want to make it illegal. Oh, by the way, I'd love a revenue impact statement because now in Arkansas, here it is. Hang on, that's not it. That's something else. Where is this bill on tobacco? Oh, here it is. Is this it right here? No, that's the governor. Well, hang on, Joe. You have it pulled up there, right? Reduce school funding. Oh, do I have the same one? Okay, I've got. Yeah, go ahead and pull the Arkansas article up. You've got it on your screen. I've got it up there. The one about tobacco. Here it is. Yeah, this is from. Oh, it's Channel 7. Arkansas bill proposes to outlaw sale of tobacco and vapor products to people under 21. This is exactly what Governor Blackface just signed, because they have exemptions for the military as well. All right, scrolling down here. Let me get a read here. Okay, it's a bipartisan piece of legislation calls for the prohibition of selling tobacco products. Let's see here. House Bill 1519 here in Arkansas deals with the prohibition of minors purchasing, using, or possessing tobacco products, vapor products, alternative nicotine products, e-liquid products, and cigarette papers. So let's stop right here. Listen, this is also something that is that the feds are freaking out about this too, right? Because they've seen the uptick because of vaping, because of a piece of technology. You know, these I've heard them advertised on talk radio, the Juul pods. Yeah, I know. I mean, I've seen the ads already about how awful Juul is for it and everything else. But my point is, a little piece of technology, it's got it's a pen or whatever, or whatever these things are. And, it heats up and then you can vape or whatever. And so I think Arkansas has already made strides. Listen to me. They've made strides because they took the vape products, the new technology, and they brought it in under tobacco so they could tax it. So they certainly want to benefit off of these kids' vice. Oh, are they kids? Well, they're 18. I guess I don't understand. If you're 18 now and it's legal, well, Paul, they're going to say 18-year-olds, they're 16-year-olds that are vaping. Okay, so if the age limit right now is 18 and there are, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old kids already vaping, how does raising the age to 21 going to stop 16-year-olds from getting their hands on it? But go ahead. I mean, we got to take a break. We've gone way over. It's 24 past. Okay. So I've got a little bit more time. Okay. So State Representative Lee Johnson, a Republican from Greenwood, filed the bill with the support of fellow Republican and Democrats from both chambers of the Arkansas legislature. Quote, "This is a real problem and a crisis. And what we're trying to do with this policy is try to reduce access to our younger kids in that 12 to 17-year-old age frame." Well, they're already smoking it then, and the age is already 18. My goodness. We'll see. What time is it? Has it been 20 years? It's been 20 years. It's been 20 years. It's time to have another tobacco smoking crisis because people don't know it's bad for you. I don't know. I mean, what can the government do to change the human heart to not want to put drugs in the body to change, the chemicals going on in your brain? What could the government do to stop that desire? You know what I'm saying? If anything, the Arkansas legislature should pass a resolution that says, yeah, smoking's bad for you, and if there are any parents out there, and you don't want your kids smoking, you need to be involved in their lives. And if you catch them doing something you don't want them doing, then you should discipline them. You should take away their tobacco products, and give them a swift kick in the behind. Oh, I mean, maybe that's child abuse. I don't know. But that would be it's the parents' responsibility. You don't want your kids doing this, make the parents, right? Or if you're selling tobacco products and the age is 18 and you're selling tobacco products to kids who are, 17, 16, well, that's an enforcement issue. But we need to raise it to 21. It's Johnny Cash Friday. I'm just a little worked up this morning. We're going to be back in a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
We've got on the line, welcome back to the show, Senator Tom Cotton is with us. Senator Cotton, thanks so much for spending time with us this morning.
Good morning, Paul. It's good to be on with you.
Yes, sir. I just want to say, thanks for being on the forefront. I know you're definitely supporting, you've had some great ideas about reforming our immigration system. And I understand that there is now talk about needing to get something done when it comes to E-Verify. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Paul, I am going to be introducing legislation that would expand to all employers and make permanent our electronic employment verification system. So this was a system that was created as a pilot program in 1996, but it's been successful. It's gotten better over the last 23 years. Rather than going into work and submitting the paper documents that so many people are familiar with on the first day of the job, say a driver's license or a concealed carry permit or a passport, there'd be a very quick online system. That system works. Its error rate is infinitesimally small, and it's been proven time and again to be the single best deterrent from employing illegal immigrants. So it helps turn off the jobs magnet in our country. There's a lot of debate in the news, obviously, about border barriers and more Border Patrol agents and more border detention facilities, all of which are very important. But one of the main reasons that people immigrate illegally to this country is to take jobs from Americans. If they know that they're going to have to clear an effective electronic verification system, they're much less likely to make that journey in the first place. Moreover, it helps hold employers accountable. When employers are saying, we don't want to use E-Verify because it doesn't work, what they really mean is it does work. They want to get cheap, unskilled, and low-skilled labor into the country so they're not having to pay higher wages to American citizens. That's not what I want to see. I want to see all Americans taking part in the prosperity that America is creating.
Absolutely. And I think, certainly that reflects, I think, the sentiment of a vast majority of Arkansans. It's the common sense thing to do. It is about economic security as well as national security. Again, folks, we're talking with Senator Tom Cotton. We're talking about E-Verify. You mentioned the low wages that employers tend to want. So they tend to want illegal immigration. And then you have maybe the other side that sees illegal immigrants as maybe a future dependent class, also future votes for liberal progressive policies. And I kind of feel like that's why this crisis at the border, it's not something, it's gotten worse, but it's not something that just happened overnight. This has been going on for years, if not, a decade or more. And now we finally have, President Trump bringing this to the forefront of the nation's attention. And I think that's a positive thing to try to fix this problem.
Paul, it really goes back in some ways to the 1986 immigration law, which Ronald Reagan said was one of his worst mistakes in office. That bill gave an amnesty up front in return for enforcement later. Unfortunately, we didn't get the enforcement. We didn't get border barriers. We didn't get more interior enforcement at the workplace. We didn't get reform laws to allow the deportation of violent and felonious illegal aliens that we were all promised, because so many people in Washington joined forces to stop all that. They all wanted the amnesty, big business, pardon me, And a lot of politicians and their backers across the country, they wanted more cheap, unskilled, and low-skilled labor. It's understandable. I get the economic point of it, but we owe it to our own citizens to protect American jobs for American citizens. Moreover, we want to welcome the kind of immigrants who can succeed in our country, who are going to contribute to the economy, who are going to help grow the economy, and ultimately become citizens, not just temporary guest workers that come in and take work and then go back home. I'd much rather see immigrants who want to become American citizens rather than folks who are coming in here to work for a few months to take jobs that Americans could be doing.
Why do you think the left is so offended when, your ideas on more of a merit-based immigration system where, we want people who come into this country that already have skills, that they can participate in the economy, they can pay taxes, do things like that. Why do you think today that is so offensive to those? They even say maybe it's even racist sometimes.
Well, that's a very good question, Paul. I mean, sometimes I think it reflects the left's reflective desire for ever more immigration. And it's not just here in America. You see it in Europe as well. Look what Angela Merkel did in Germany a few years back, just throwing open the doors to anyone who could come. I think it's also a bit of a left-wing challenge to the very idea of the nation state, that, a nation state with borders and a people is something that is a good thing. I think it's one of the great developments in modern human history. I mean, one reason why we have freedom, why we have security, why we have prosperity is that we have a nation with borders, with a government that can provide police services and the rule of law and protection for our property and protection from threats from abroad. 500, 1,000 years ago, you didn't have those things. Look at what happens in movies and TV shows like Game of Thrones. The nation state is the way that we protect ourselves, that we grow our own wealth, that we have a community. A lot of folks on the left are very cosmopolitan in their view of the world. They think the nation state is somehow inherently suspect, and that anybody who wants to be an American should be considered American. That's not the way I view things. I was elected by 3 million Arkansans to represent the interest of Arkansans, not the interest of foreigners. I may wish them well, but it is not my duty to make sure that they are prospering and they are safe. It's my duty to do that for Arkansans and for all Americans.
We're talking with Senator Tom Cotton. Senator Cotton, the president declares this national emergency. A lot of people saw this coming. Do you think it's an emergency down there? Do you think it is a crisis on our southern border?
We do have a genuine crisis on our southern border, Paul, and I'll tell you one reason why is that our immigration system, both our physical infrastructure and our legal system, is not equipped for the kind of migration patterns we're seeing now, in part because of well-intentioned law passed by both parties. We are essentially having to let anyone who shows up in our border with a child that they claim is their child in, who rarely then ever shows up again. Immigration has changed in recent years, so we still have a lot of young men coming in to work in jobs, but increasingly we have family units, people with children who are coming in saying they want to claim asylum, they want to be a refugee. Now, I would say that a lot of those claims are not well-grounded because they're not claiming they're facing persecution because of their religion or political views or sex. They're just claiming that conditions in Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador are dangerous and poor. That's true, but that's what most of the world calls life. That doesn't make us responsible for it. But our immigration system is not well equipped to either detain families together or to track families once we release them into the United States. That's one reason why it's so urgent. Not just that we build the border barriers that get so much attention, but that we change those asylum laws, that we provide more family detention centers and give more flexibility to our border professionals, so we make sure that we don't have a functional open border. So if anybody shows up with a child that they claim asylum, they just get released in the country and never come back.
I'm so glad that you brought that up. During the State of the Union address, the president talked about putting the cartels, the drug dealers, and the human traffickers out of business. That scenario that you just raised, somebody comes to, with a child they claim is their own, and then you never see him again. Sex trafficking is a real problem down there, and that gets so little media attention.
Yeah, so these networks of traffickers will move anything that they can make a dime off. They'll move illicit drugs like marijuana and heroin and fentanyl. They will move stolen goods, and they'll move art and other artifacts. But in this case, they will also move people, to include little children and little girls. They're not just viewed as a get into the country free ticket, but are viewed as sexual objects that they can make money off of repeatedly. It's grotesque. It's sickening, but it unfortunately happens a lot. And anything we do to encourage the view in Central America that you can pay a few $1,000s to one of these traffickers, have your child come to the United States and get released here, is only going to create more incentives for these human traffickers.
Yeah, and, and that brings us back to the E-Verify, the legislation that, like you said, you're working on right now. It really is about, we have to disincentivize. We do need the border security, we do need the wall, but if they come here and they can't find employment, then there's no reason to come here.
That is one reason why an E-Verify system at the workplace is a supplement to a border barrier. It's a supplement to
all right, here we go,
control.
folks. It's Johnny Cash Friday, an Arkansas tradition. Mr. Johnny Cash. Always great to talk to him. I was at the Capitol yesterday. I was in the cafeteria, and I was having a conversation with former state representative Charlie Collins, who is now working for he's now working for the executive branch. He works for the governor. I think in the is it budget? Is that what it is? I can't remember the exact title, but he definitely he's crunching numbers. Anyway, so I saw Charlie and I was just talking to him, and he's always a nice guy, and it's always good to talk to Charlie. I know we've had our disagreements in the past about policy and things like that, but it's always good to talk. And he asked specifically about Johnny Cash, and he said that listening to the show, he realized that as he was getting older, that there was all these Johnny Cash songs he didn't even know were Johnny Cash songs, and how good they were, and he's become a real fan of Johnny Cash. So, that's true of that's true of a lot of people. It's true of myself personally, and that's why I'm so glad that the Arkansas Senate they're trying to send Johnny Cash's statue to the Capitol in Washington D.C. As every state gets 2 statues that they send, and nobody knows who ours are now because they're from the 1800s. And anyway, yeah, I think it's appropriate. I think it's 100% appropriate, considering, who Johnny Cash was. Now, personally, because I know we got this on Monday when we covered it, a lot of people look at Johnny Cash and they look at some of his moral failures, and they say, is that the kind of guy? I don't know if you've really researched Johnny, but if you do, and you research some of his theological statements, especially later in life, his story is like all of our stories, really, if you think about it. And from a Christian worldview, it's a story of redemption and forgiveness. And what I would say, and forgive me if I'm being presumptuous here. And Joe, you can maybe get in on some of this if you want, but if you look from what I can tell, the word sanctification comes to mind if you actually look at the ups and downs of Johnny Cash's life. That's what I see, at least. Folks, yesterday night I was at the Arkansas Liberty Coalition, and I got to hear Chris Ann Hall. She's a constitutional attorney, talk radio host. You've heard her on the program before. She's right now in the middle of a tour of the state of Arkansas. She's been all over the place. She's going to be in Jonesboro one more night tonight at the Hilton Garden Inn for one more lesson. This is on America Disarmed. Last night was on state sovereignty, and it was incredible. It was also depressing. She wasn't depressing, but and I say this when we interviewed her on what do we have her on Wednesday. It's just obvious that the Constitution is, for practical purposes, is meaningless in terms of how state governments operate and how the federal government operates. That's not to say the document itself is meaningless. I'm just saying we are so far outside of the prescription, the original prescription of how we were going to organize, that it just makes me a little depressed. That's all. And it's stuff that I've known for a while, but it was a fantastic presentation. And I'm sure it's going to be even better tonight. And then on Saturday and Sunday, she's going to be in Hot Springs. And she's going to be teaching some great folks down in those woods. But let me just tell you, this is the favorite part, and I didn't get to stay for the whole thing, and I was really sorry about that. I could only stay for an hour because it was past my bedtime, and I had to get up and do this program. But I did stay for quite a bit of it, and it was absolutely fantastic. And the best part was, to me, when she defined what a state was using our founding documents. And she defined the difference between a colony and a state, and how if you're a colony, you have to check with a central authority to exercise your rights, property rights, personal rights. You're a colony, so you have to check with a centralized power. So when we declared our independence from Great Britain and we set up these states, and if you look up the definition of what a state is, and then you compare the writings, meaning when we are separating, and in the document it says we're separating from the, quote, state of Great Britain, you realize pretty quickly that our founding fathers, they meant for a state like Arkansas, under the equal footing doctrine, and obviously the original 13, that let's just take the state of Virginia, for example, has the same rights, powers that a state like Great Britain has. They were basically making them equal. All 13 separate ones have the same authority, sovereign authority, as a state like Great Britain or Germany or France or Spain. And that was the original understanding. I wish the entire 135-member body of the Arkansas legislature could have been in that room last night. I really do. There would have been some very uncomfortable people, because there are a lot of people that just think, you know what, they are what she called federal supremacists, and that is, most people are. Most people who consider themselves to be conservatives are, in fact, that. And it makes you uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable because no one likes to be told that they're wrong, but more importantly, in my case, nobody likes to be told just how far outside the truth of the original intent this country is. And she said that what she was teaching on, which was essentially just the writings of our founders like, James Madison and Alexander Hamilton and others, it stopped being taught in this country in 1833, because we had new textbooks at that time. Oh, that was back when kids actually had textbooks. For for you millennials and Generation Zers out there listening, there was a time when you actually were given a textbook by your public school. I know, right? Crazy. Makes no sense. Believe it or not, I'm 34 years old, and I used to have textbooks. Anyway, Chris Ann Hall was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And she is an incredible teacher and very dynamic, and she is doing exactly what she is meant to do, in my opinion, right now. I don't know what the end game is. I have no idea, again, because it's, to me, the task of actually getting back to that concept where, and it's essentially the concept that the states created the federal government. When the states created the federal government, they did not surrender to the federal government. They temporarily delegated the federal government authority. To get back to that and see it practically, to see it practically exercised in our state governments today, to me, is such a daunting task. I don't know what the end game is, but I do know Chris Ann Hall's doing an amazing job going around teaching people. Joe. Oh, man. Joe just said we're in the end game now. What he's referring to is, I can't believe I'm going to derail the whole show. He's referring to Marvel's The Avengers movie. See, this is why we don't care about the Constitution. We'd rather talk about Marvel superheroes. We don't care about the Constitution. We're talking about practice. So yeah, that's what Doctor Strange says. We're in the end game now, Tony. I am excited about the when does it come out? This summer? Is this summer Avengers 3 or whatever? Or Avengers 4, actually. It's Avengers 4. Yeah, I'm excited about that. Let's see here. Journalist groups are alarmed by Justice Clarence Thomas's call to reconsider a free press ruling. Well, that's because journalists have taken so much liberty and they have intentionally tried to deceive the public for so long that now people are wondering if the freedom of the press needs to be curtailed a little bit. So thanks a lot, liars. You know, a bad apple or a bunch of bad apples spoiling the whole bunch. Seriously. The press is so dishonest. They are begging to be, they're begging the benefit of the doubt to be taken from them. The benefit of the doubt meaning, well, they're the press. They wouldn't lie to me, right? And they're the press, so we should believe them, right? I mean, and they're just begging for it. Professional journalism groups reacted with alarm after Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas released an opinion Tuesday urging the High Court to reconsider a landmark freedom of the press decision called the New York Times versus Sullivan. The Sullivan ruling generally shields reporters and news platforms from libel or defamation lawsuits, provided they were acting in good faith. Though journalists believe that protection is essential, Justice Thomas said the High Court was wrong to usurp the role of states in regulating libel. Hey, that sounds like fun. That sounds good. Sullivan and the court's decision extending it were policy-driven decisions masquerading as constitutional law, Thomas, his opinion says. Another quote, "We should not continue to reflexively apply this policy-driven approach to the Constitution. Instead," Thomas says, "we should carefully examine the original meaning of the First and 14 Amendments." Wow. So this has got journalism groups upset. Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, it does need to go to the states. I mean, this kind of goes in our conversation last night with Chris Ann Hall. I mean, the federal government, and you know, people will say, well, jurisprudence, you know, and that's what you're taught in law school now. You know, no one's really taught the Constitution in law school, right? You're taught these opinions, and you're taught to respect, and maybe it's this natural thing that's happened. You know, you got to teach this attorney how to address a judge. You got to have these court. I would call them they're like judicial Kobayashi Maru scenarios. I don't believe in no-win situations, but you know they do it. What's it called? Is it mock court or I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know, but you've got these Kobayashi Maru scenarios where you know you're putting these attorneys and you know they got to know how to mess with the court, and so then their decisions are really looked at, and you know a judge is more. I mean, I think most judges are more likely to respond to arguments based on previous judicial system than they are the original social contract of the Constitution of the United States of America. So there's that. Anyway, I'm back to being depressed again. Folks, the telephone number 870-275-9799 if you would like to contribute to the program. Coming up at 7 o'clock, I want to talk a little bit about the Arkansas House Public Health Committee. Just have a few things to say about that. Also, we've got Bernie Sanders running for president. We haven't talked about this at all, but I found a very interesting article where back in 1986, Bernie Sanders was reminiscing about watching the 1960 presidential debates between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon and how it made him sick to hear them talk tough about Fidel Castro's uprising. Bernie Sanders saying, but I remember. I'm not going to do a very good Bernie Sanders impersonation, I don't think. But I remember for some reason being very excited when Fidel Castro made the revolution in Cuba. I was a kid, and I remember reading that. Let's see here. He goes on. Scrolling down. And it just seemed right and appropriate that poor people were rising up against rather ugly rich people. And I remember I was watching the debates. Remember the famous Nixon-Kennedy debates? That was the first time the presidential candidates actually debated. And I was becoming increasingly interested in politics. And at that time, I was very excited and impressed by the Cuban Revolution. And there was Kennedy and Nixon talking about which particular method they should use about destroying the revolution. Kennedy was saying that Nixon was too soft on communism. We should deal firmly with Fidel Castro. And Nixon was playing the role of, hey, you got to be patient. You can't do these things. You got to go negotiate. Anyway, he goes on. So he was the liberal and Kennedy was playing the conservative. But I actually got up from the room and almost left to puke because for the first time in my adult life, what I was seeing is the Democrats and Republicans, both of them, that clearly there wasn't a whole lot of difference between the two. Well, back then, Republicans and Democrats generally agreed that we shouldn't be forced to put all of our money into one big pot and divide it up equally. People generally agreed that communism and socialism were wrong, Bernie. Good grief. But anyway, I just found that interesting. You know, John F. Kennedy, if you go listen to speeches about his tax policy, he's clearly a moderate. Actually, he's a conservative Republican today on tax policy. He couldn't get the Democrat Party nomination if he tried. Oh, and I bet Kennedy would be for strong national security. I bet he'd be for border security, too, in this day and age. It kind of sounds familiar. 870-275-9799. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. Back in just a moment.
Agents. There's no single solution to our illegal immigration problem. It's kind of like, if you look at a band, a band can't just have one instrument in it. It's got to have multiple instruments if it wants to make great music. Same thing goes with illegal immigration. You need border barriers. You need border patrol agents. You need more detention centers and judges. But you have to cut off the jobs magnet. And the simplest way to do that and to protect American jobs is E-Verify at the workplace.
Wow. Senator Tom Cotton, really appreciate you coming on the program, spending some time with us this morning.
Thank you, Paul.
All right. Yeah, have a great day. Senator Tom Cotton, everybody. It's always great to have him on. And I'm telling you, the stuff with this stuff that he's promoting with this E-Verify is obviously, like he said, supplemental to border security. And, of course, I love the idea of some of these bigger reforms that maybe can't get traction yet. But the idea, other countries do this where if you want to come to, this country, I think Australia does it, others, you're going to have to provide that prove that you have.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Of immigrants. We want, because the bottom line is, if we had unlimited resources, then it would be one thing, but we don't have unlimited resources. And, so this immigration thing is about national security. Okay, so we need a secure border, right? Yeah, you do have terrorists that try to come in and do American harm. You do have the MS-13. You do have the angel moms who have lost their children because of illegal immigration. You have all that. But then there's also something, and nobody wants to talk about this, but there's also something called economic security. You heard Senator Cotton talk about it there. This is the idea that we need to, for the benefit of the Americans living here, we don't need to promote policies that are going to make them poorer. And even if you're a progressive and you agree with a social safety net, right? These progressives drive me nuts. Like, so they want these welfare programs. Okay, and I can get behind social safety net for those who truly need it. You have these welfare programs that are made less solvent. Okay, they're made insolvent by unchecked illegal immigration. But in order to get them to agree, that they have to agree that countries with borders, we want a safety net, but we want the safety net for Americans. Oh, that is somehow so radically offensive these days. But isn't that what we should be doing? Shouldn't our policies help?
All right, welcome back. I want to take a look at this Facebook post. What is it? What is this? 15 hours ago, Conduit News on their Facebook posts this. The Arkansas Senate has approved the $85 million gas tax hike with a vote of 27-8. The bill now goes to the House, where competing highway funding bills that proposed using existing tax revenue have been filed. You see this here. You see the vote here. Not great. I mean, look at how many Republicans voted for this tax increase. Some notable comments. We've got how many comments on this? 38 comments, 34 shares. All right. Let's see. Ron on Facebook writing, our, quote, Republican, end quote, Arkansas government lowering taxes, making government smaller, and eliminating regulations looks just like the Democrats raising taxes, growing government, and adding regulations. Come on, Arkansas. Sandy on Facebook writing, Scott Flippo, you should have voted no. Listen to your constituents or you risk not being reelected. My opinion. Ella on Facebook. I can't really read that. What does that say? Sandy? I think there's some typos there. Can't really read that one. Let's see here. Shauna, can you provide contact info for taxpayers to oppose this? Let's see here. What else do we have? Margie. These are all there. Joe, you may have trouble finding them. Margie Cochran, wolves in sheep's clothing. They are all corrupt. I don't know if passing a tax increase doesn't make them all corrupt, but I'm just telling you, this is what some people think right now out there. Angie, I am praying the House will listen to the people and vote accordingly. Ella, man, could they not find it someplace other than taking more money from hardworking people? Mick, let's see. Mick writing, hope yours works out better for you than ours in Michigan has. So Mick's from Michigan. Let's see here. A lot of people are upset with Republicans voting for this thing. You can check out this post for yourself, and legislators might want to, because it appears we have people commenting on this from all districts all across the state that they don't want to pay any more at the pump.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
But the left doesn't want these borders anymore. You know, they just don't think, they think it's an antiquated notion. They don't understand that borders represent ideas. Go look at a picture of the Korean Peninsula at night. I've said this a million times. The Korean Peninsula at night.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Joining us now, we have Congressman Bruce Westerman on the line. Bruce, it's always good to have you on, sir. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, good to be with you, Paul. I didn't hear the Johnny Cash music this morning.
Well, I know. We were kind of already a little bit into the segment, but hey, we'll get you some on the way out of the segment. How about that?
That'll work. I hear the legislature may put Johnny Cash's statue up here in the Capitol.
Boy, I think that's that would be amazing, and that's what I want to happen. But I don't know. I actually haven't heard an update on that in a while. Because
I just heard a little bit about it a while back, but not anything recently.
Yeah, we get two, right? And right now, I don't think anybody even remembers the people that are up there now. So that'll be interesting to see what happens.
I know because I give Capitol tours, but I bet most Arkansans don't know.
Well, so Congressman Westerman, let's get your thoughts on everything that's going on right now with the budget deal. The president now saying that he's going to sign it and avert a government shutdown. Leader McConnell in the Senate saying that he'll also declare a national emergency. What are your thoughts on everything? What's the environment up there right now?
Well, it's like deja vu all over again. We've got a spending bill. Here we're middle of February, dealing with a spending bill that should have been passed last September. And I think people forget that when we get into these situations that seem to be the normal rather than the oddity anymore. And it's why I continue to harp on the fact that we've got to get those spending bills done on time so that we don't get in these situations. I wrote an op-ed a couple of weeks ago about this, but what happens, Paul, is we've got 12 spending bills. Everybody knows right now that the federal budget runs out September 30th of 2019. We should be working on those appropriation bills, getting them through the House and through the Senate. You get to debate them, you get to offer amendments, and you obviously don't get everything you want on those, but at least they go through the process, and you can do the responsible thing and fund the government at the end of the day. What has happened, though, is the senators, Democratic senators who are in the minority now, know that they can't even bring one of those bills up for a vote without cloture. So we'll pass the bills in the House, get them over to the Senate, and they'll just sit there. This past year, we actually got 3/4 of the spending approved in September, and which left this 25%, which this bill yesterday was about $330 billion, was what was left to approve. But that could have been done last September, but for political purposes, the senators wouldn't allow cloture on the bill. So you go into a continuing resolution, and then it gets to an expiration date, and you go into another continuing resolution. And then here we are, middle of February, and we get a bill that was released at, I think, 1 a.m. in the morning, and the Senate voted on it yesterday, and then we voted on it last night. So a 1,200-page bill with no time to read it, but it's more the principle of the way we're doing business up here. And now we've put the president in a position where he's got a responsibility to, there's a commander-in-chief of the chief person responsible for our security, of not having the funds from Congress to do what he believes is needed to keep our country secure. So now you're getting into constitutional issues on whether he can take money that's been appropriated for one thing, declare an emergency, and use it for another thing. It's not a good situation. I don't think it's the way our founders intended for the government to be operated.
No, and yet I think there's, on our side, there's a lot of support, I think, for the president to just build the wall. I mean, do the thing. You know, take the money from the Pentagon, do whatever, use the military, and get it done. And then, of course, a lot of people are wondering, okay, well, what kind of precedent does that set? But I mean, there is a national emergency law.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. Hour number 2. It is Johnny Cash Friday. Welcome to the show, as always. We like to kick off Johnny Cash Fridays by listening to just a little Johnny Cash. A day where we try to listen to as much Johnny Cash music as we can, while at the same time peppering in the news and events of the day and the week and the past week. We've got a lot to get to. Let's start with Senator Terry Rice yesterday from the Senate floor. We've got the video pulled up if you want to take a look at it. Senator Terry Rice said this while presenting his highway tax plan yesterday, SB 336, that has tax increases, which means you will be paying more at the pump. It passed the Senate overwhelmingly. Let's listen to Senator Rice from the Senate floor yesterday.
Maintenance and repair of highways, streets, and bridges in the state.
Senator Rice, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues, and to the many people who have worked for highway improvements for many years. There's been quite a bit of discussion on this. Senate Bill 336, subtitled "To Provide Additional Revenue for Maintenance and Repair of Highways, Streets, and Bridges in the State." Something that the citizenry has been asking and many times demanding. It is not a bill that is simple, and it has been worked on again for many years. It's the first of 2 parts of Governor Hutchison's highway investment program. The other part that to make clear for you and those listening, the other part is a half-cent extension, and that will be in a separate bill, not this bill. This does not do everything. It doesn't hit the figure that the Highway Commission and auditors verifying their figures have told us that's necessary. It's up to some. The money doesn't flow as quickly as we'd like for the needs on the roads, and some who don't want to put more money because of the additional taxes in this. It's understandable that not everybody agrees. I do believe, as I stated in committee yesterday, that the governor's highway investment program is substantial, it is prudent, and it is long-term. And to me, those 3 things need to be met. SB 336 will impose a new percentage-based tax on gasoline and diesel. The new tax will be based on the average regional cost of fuel in the Gulf States region during the 2018 calendar year as publicly reported by the U.S. Department of Energy. The tax will be determined by the average price by multiplying these average prices by 1.6% for gasoline, 2.9% for diesel. These percentages are calculated to raise 3 cents per gallon on gasoline, 6 cents per gallon on diesel. The rates of tax will be recalculated annually based on prices in the region. If the fuel prices fall, the rate of tax will remain constant from the previous year. If fuel prices rise, the rate of tax cannot increase more than 1/10 of 1 penny. And that translates into the maximum increase of 1 cent over the decade.
All right, stop. That is Senator Terry Rice saying a lot of what he said in the committee video that we covered yesterday as well. So, here's the thing. The Senate passed this with 27 yes votes and 8 no votes. You had the no votes are Senator Ballinger, Senator Clark, Senator Davis, Senator Dismang, Senator Gardner, Senator Hammer, Senator Hester, and Senator Hill. Your yes votes, Senators Bledsoe, Bond, Caldwell, Cheatham, Chesterfield. So there's some Democrats in here. Cooper, Eads, Elliott, English, Flippo, Flowers, Hendren, Hickey, Ingram, Irvin, Blake Johnson, M. Johnson, Letting, Malik, Pitch, Rapert, Rice, Sample, Stubblefield, Sturge, Teague, and Wallace. Now, I don't know why, but for some reason, and this is something that happens in a lot of places, from what I can tell based on my research of Republican-led states, if it's going to fund roads, there seems to be people that just think, well, we can pass tax increases on the people if it's to fund roads. I disagree. I mean, with that being the smart choice, I don't think that's the conservative thing to do, is to constantly go back to the people to get more money. It's an $85 million gas tax hike. So this is on the heels of what, 95, so they cut income taxes by 95 million one week, and then they raise them. They're going to raise gas taxes by 85 million the next week, and then they're going to extend a $200 million. They're going to get $200 million by extending a half-cent sales tax. That bill's coming up. Now, I will tell you this, that from what I can hear, from what I'm hearing, that one has that one's getting a little maybe less support than anticipated, referring the half-cent sales tax to the people. But we'll see what happens. I'm not optimistic at this point. But this is extremely, if you're conservative and you think that the government should cut spending and then use the savings to pay for roads, so cut spending elsewhere and then, use the, because we all agree we want roads. Why do you think these Republicans are so willing to vote for the tax increase? Well, they know it might make the people upset, but their county judges and people in county government and their mayors, they want that 30% because the money that's raised from this, 70% is going to go to the state highway department and 30% is going to be, going to go to the cities and counties. And so, these Republicans are hearing from these local officials back home saying, you know what, we really could use some more money to build better roads. And then they have this argument, and I know I'm making their argument for them, but I'm just telling you, then they're going to say, well, roads are good for the economy because you can get from one place to another. And that is true, but the principle here needs to be applied in a consistent manner. And the principle at stake here in the Republican Party platform, I mean, we can treat the Republican Party platform like a buffet and pick and choose the planks we like and we don't like. We can do that. Matter of fact, that's what's happening here. From issue to issue, the fact of the matter is our economy is better off when people have more money in their own pockets to do with their money what they want to do with it. Now, it is consumption-based. I understand that too. But the bottom line is this. We don't cut spending. We continue to spend more and more every year. And then they come back to us for more money. And that is a very difficult pill to swallow for a lot of people out there. We all want roads, but, and why we're already sending the government a lot of money to pay for our roads. Where's that money going? Where do we go from here? I mean, there is a point to where Arkansans can be so overly taxed that you realize, I think we're kind of almost there. I think we're almost at the tipping point where they're just taxing us left and right. And it's frustrating. Listen, I like the income tax cut. I think it was great that we had a clean bill and a clean income tax. I think it's good that this bill is somewhat clean in terms of the fact that at least they are owning up to it. Can you show that Facebook post again? And just show the board. We've got a photo here, Conduit News Facebook page. Look, they're owning up to it. There are their yes votes. There are their no votes. This is a clear tax increase on gasoline and diesel. So I can respect that. And I've said that, I can respect that they're owning up and saying, you know what, we're passing a tax increase. But what I wish would have happened that didn't happen, and it's not a perfect world, I understand, but what I wish would have happened that didn't happen is a conversation with the people saying, we have done everything we can, we have cut this, we've even attempted to cut it. Even if there was some bill to cut spending that failed, even if there was some effort that was made to dramatically reduce spending and allocate that for highways. You know what I'm saying? And even if it failed, maybe maybe you could say, well, you know what? We tried it. It failed. I would rather cut spending, but I have terrible roads. And listen, there are people all over the state that have terrible roads. I get it. I understand. I'm from North. I'm born and raised and still live in Northeast Arkansas. I don't know about the rest of the state, but I just want you to know the mentality about roads up here in Northeast Arkansas has always been one of kind of a redheaded stepchild. You know what I'm saying? Can I say that? Is that bad? Is that anti? My daughter and my wife have red hair, so I can say that. You can't say those words, but I can say it. That's our word. Anyway, so I understand. I'm from Northeast Arkansas. I understand how the whole road situation, up here, people have been complaining my entire life, about how the road funding, you never get the adequate road funding. And I'm sure South Arkansas, other places. The one place that doesn't complain is Northwest Arkansas because their roads are immaculate. And they really are. But anyway, so, and I know there'd probably be some people that disagree. They could come up here and, say, your roads are fine. There are a lot of state highways that look like city streets, but they're the state's responsible for paving them and maintaining them, some of those roads. There's no will to give some of those state highways back to the cities and county. There's no will to do that. Then you'd have your local community raising taxes. See, any way you shape it, the only way to pay for the roads is to get government spending under control, whether it's at the local level or the state level. And to me, it doesn't appear that we have done that. When we take in more and more revenue, we spend more and more each year, and that's why we're in this situation. This vote yesterday that you see on your screen is a result of fiscal irresponsibility. That's what this is a result of. Senator Rice said we're kicking the can down. We can't continue to kick the can down the road. We are here, I agree, because we have kicked the can down the road, but from a different reason. The can we've kicked down the road is one of fiscal. We've continued to be fiscally irresponsible. We've kicked the fiscally responsible can down the road and just refused to do it, and now that's why they're raising taxes on you. That's why they're raising taxes. Now, we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, I want to change topics a little bit. This week was Scope Week, and in the Scope Week was about expanding the scope of practice for medical professionals. We covered one bill, an optometry bill, that failed at first. Yesterday, there was a telemedicine bill that also failed by State Representative Dan Sullivan. It was actually run by State Representative Gonzalez. And I was there for most of the debate, and it's very frustrating when we have heavily stacked committees dominated by Republicans, but we can't get any deregulation passed. And we're one of the most heavily burdened and licensed states in the nation, and we have people that just don't seem to. So I've had people ask me, Paul, why does the House Public Health Committee, why will they not pass any deregulation of medical professionals, allowing them to do what they were trained to do, or allowing technology to do better things? Why won't they go along with this? Because there's a pattern now, and they are, as a whole, the House Committee is allergic to doing anything that gives people and patients more freedom and choice because they don't trust us. I'll tell you what my theory is on why the House Public Health Committee is allergic to health care reforms that would actually give people more choice and would weaken the government's control over our lives. I'll give you my theory on that next. You know, back in the 70s, where presidents can declare national emergencies, obviously it's going to be challenged in court. But this is what I've been saying, Congressman Westerman, is that I do believe it is a crisis. I do believe it rises to the level of an emergency. And there's some people that don't, but that's just because they don't realize, just the media has not been reporting the crisis at the border for decades. And, you know, when you take into account the human trafficking, the sex trafficking that's going on, that in and of itself should spark bipartisan unions about trying to stop this.
You know, we passed bills in Congress and gloat about them, about preventing human trafficking. And the one thing we could do to probably affect human trafficking as much as anything would be to get better security along the border. And then the drug problem is, I think people are starting to understand how bad it is, but I don't think people really have got their hands around how horrible fentanyl is. And most everybody, if you'll start talking to people, everybody knows someone who's died of an opiate overdose, or is in a rehab program, or has a messed up life because of opiates. And the amount of fentanyl that is coming across the southern border is astonishing. I mean, it's enough lethal doses to kill our population several times over. Mm-hmm. And it just is continuing to grow. And it drives me crazy when people say we're seizing these drugs at the designated border crossings. Well, no duh, because you've got dogs there and you've got scanners and you're able to detect them. But when somebody's in the middle of nowhere walking across the border with nothing deterring them, you're not going to catch them and apprehend drugs there. So it's there's not a lot of common sense going into what being portrayed in the media along the southern border.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine, a colonel, a couple days ago, and he was saying that this fentanyl is, you know, it's pretty much close to a biological weapon in terms of, you know, I've read stories where SWAT teams go in to make a bust, and they end up being hospitalized because of exposure, meaning they're just breathing the air where the fentanyl is, and you know, it's like airborne, and they have to go to the hospital. I mean, that's crazy.
And I've heard that where they're cooking meth. Now, fentanyl, you 2 milligrams is a lethal dose. You inhale that, and you're probably not going to make it. You can get too much of it on your skin, and it'll take you out. And these drug cartels are sprinkling it on the heroin to make the heroin more addictive. And, you know, a lot of these, this illegal fentanyl is being made in China, and I don't know if you saw this, but the Chinese government basically said they were issuing the death penalty for anybody caught making fentanyl over there.
Okay.
That's their public policy. But it's being made in China and shipped in to the U.S. But it's a epidemic. It's doing great harm to our country, and it is a national security issue.
Absolutely. I mean, I really do think just the southern border. You know, I with what's going on, Bruce, in New York, what's going on in Virginia when it comes to, you know, pro-life issues. You know, I think the liberal progressive guy Bill Maher, he said, trying to make fun of Republicans, that our issues are the wall and the womb. But I tend to agree with him, but I think those issues at this point we've gotten so far away from. Well, we can't even really talk about esoteric conservative governance. We have to talk about just basic tenets of civilization, protecting
For our
life,
online
and a
audience
nation
today that's
doing
not
what it can
able
to
to
ensure
hear
that the amazing Johnny Cash music. We are playing for you. The last 3 weeks, we've interviewed 3 members of the Arkansas, Washington, D.C. delegation: Congressman Rick Crawford, Congressman Bruce Westerman, and Senator Tom Cotton earlier this week. Matter of fact, what's interesting, I saw Congressman Bruce Westerman yesterday on my way out of the Capitol. And I said hi and thanked him for the good work he's doing. But I looked at him and said, "What are you doing here? You graduated. What are you doing back here?" Anyway, the phone number, 870-275-9799. All right, so listen up. Why in the world does the House Public Health Committee here in the state of Arkansas, why are they so allergic to actual reforms that give people more choice? We've seen the optometrist deregulation bill fail this week, and we also had telemedicine fail this week, which would have increased the ability. How many of you out there listening have ever called your doctor and gotten them to prescribe you something over the phone? Somebody said something in the committee yesterday when this bill was heard, like, a lot of us in here are privileged people. A lot of us have a personal relationship with a doctor, and we are given the benefit of the doubt. This was an effort to allow somebody without the visual stuff, because Arkansas is so bad in broadband, right, that maybe we should be able to do diagnosis on the phone. Doctors, in their professional opinion, could just do telemedicine via the phone, and this freaked the medical society out. Matter of fact, the medical society attorney was shaking. I think he's an attorney. He was shaking while he was on deck ready to testify against this bill. I was watching him. It was quite amusing to me. The medical society is against this. The medical society really controls a lot of the state. And so why do we have the public health committee that we have in the House, like the makeup of it? Okay, well, let me just tell you. The House Committee on Public Health is stacked with people to make sure Medicaid expansion and the payment to insurance companies through Obamacare Medicaid expansion doesn't go away. Okay? So the Republicans and the Democrats that are there, no, you've got exceptions. You've got exceptions like Jack Ladyman, the chair, I believe. You've got exceptions also like Josh Miller, John Payton, Mary Bentley. You have those exceptions, and maybe and then there's more, possibly Clint Penzo. But so you've got the Democrats left and the Republicans left, to where you would never get 11 votes to get any sort of Medicaid expansion to try to deal with this welfare program. You would never get that. Okay. So that's your foundation. All right? So I am blaming the reason there is no room for any reforms that give people more choice in health care. I place the blame solely with Medicaid expansion, because the people you've populated your public health committee with, the foundation of those is to protect government-run health care and this boondoggle with private insurance. So it is not a coincidence that those same people are also going to stop doing anything that deregulates a profession, expands a scope, gives people more freedom and choice to make their own decisions for their own health care. It's not a coincidence. And so I was thinking the other night, we've got about a minute left in this segment, I wonder if there are any doctors out there who are big fans of telemedicine reform, and any doctors out there who are very disappointed in the fact that telemedicine failed yesterday. But are there also doctors who are fans of telemedicine but are big supporters of Obamacare Medicaid expansion and all the great things it's done for our state? Great is in quotations, right? Well, I just want you to know you're not getting your telemedicine reform because of Obamacare Medicaid expansion, because there is something a consistency of thought process in those who are pro-Obamacare Medicaid expansion in Arkansas and those who don't want reforms that give people more freedom and more choice. Likewise, are there any optometrists out there who love Medicaid expansion but don't know why the Public Health Committee didn't give you your deregulation? It's because of how the committee is made up to protect the insurance company's money. Most vulnerable, the unborn, are allowed to have a chance at living, and once they're here, that the nation itself would not abdicate its responsibility to control who comes and goes from a sovereign country. And so, yeah, right. I mean, those are really big Republican issues right now because the other side is against them.
Yeah, I hope we're seeing the dying gasp of this pro-death movement, this abortion movement. I think the science is proving out with the technology that we got that people understand that there's life in the womb. And, this guy from Virginia saying, let the child be born and the mother can have a little bit of time to figure out if she wants to keep the baby or not. That's straight up infanticide. There's no other way to categorize that. And saying you can take the life of a baby, seconds or minutes before that baby is going to be born is it's embarrassing to me that that's happening in this country.
Yeah.
You go to countries that we think are horrible on human rights, and a lot of them have stricter abortion laws than we have, or than it's being proposed by some of these folks in New York and Virginia.
So last week, we didn't get to talk to you about last week's State of the Union address, but what were your thoughts on it?
I thought it was a great address. I thought the president did an excellent job, and I thought he talked about issues that needed to be covered. I've not been to that many State of the Union addresses, but it was by far the best one I've been to, and I think it was very well received. I really appreciated the way he commemorized the 75th anniversary of D-Day, and he had the three gentlemen there who were on the beach at D-Day. He started the speech with that, talking about what real greatness is, and then at the end he came back with the Holocaust survivor and worked that back in. And one of those gentlemen who had landed on D-Day actually had helped free that Holocaust survivor from Dachau. It was a very emotional moment, reflective time to think about just how great this country really is and the accomplishments. Seeing the astronaut there who had
Buzz Aldrin,
been to the moon. Buzz Aldrin. I kept thinking Buzz Lightyear, but Buzz Aldrin.
Hey, well, we're talking with
I've met him a couple of times.
We're talking with Congressman Bruce Westerman on the State of the Union, though. I thought it was a well-written speech, and it was delivered good too. But he really did a good job of kind of putting the Democrats, this vicious opposition. He talked about the realities of Venezuela right before he condemned socialism. He talked about paid leave, whether you support paid leave or not, but he mentioned specifically children and how parents need to bond with their precious children, and that's why paid leave is important in this country. And he does that right before he talks about abortion. So he gets the Democrats, it's like, yeah, paid leave, parents and their kids. Oh, by the way, kids are also important when they're in the womb. And then on the illegal immigration subject, right before he talked about illegal immigration in the border, Congressman Westerman, he talked about how they had just all come together for criminal justice reform. So it's like, here's a positive. Right. We came together and solved it, and we need to come together and solve this again. Of course, that doesn't appear to be what they're doing, but I just thought it was really a very well-written speech.
I do too, and I think he played them in his hand there. The only time that all the women in white stood up and clapped was when they were clapping for themselves.
Man. You know what I've realized? I've realized since covering Arkansas politics that the citizens of the great state of Arkansas are clamoring. They are demanding assisted suicide legislation. Hopefully you can pick up my sarcasm. There's been a bill filed by the one, the only State Representative Dan Douglas of Bentonville, HB 1536, that would legalize physician-assisted suicide in Arkansas. Yes, Joe, I know. It's it's what everybody's been picketing for out there. Here to talk more about this, we have the Director of Governmental Affairs for the Family Council. Mr. Ken Yang is back on the program. Ken, how you doing this morning?
Good. Oh, that was such a good Johnny Cash song.
Yeah, it is. It's one of, Roseanne Running Wild. It's a good one. Ken, talk to me a little bit. Like, what is the Family Council? Could you guys believe it when you saw that Dan Douglas filed a bill on assisted suicide?
We had actually heard rumors that there were a couple of Republican state reps that were thinking about doing something like this. And we were just, maybe they'll think better because of the state we live in. We already have a law banning physician-assisted suicide. And we were going to do a resolution to reaffirm our belief in being against physician-assisted suicide. And then, lo and behold, Representative Douglas files this. And he really files this literally a couple days after he goes to the well to speak in favor of, honestly, late-term abortion. And when he's at the well talking about, what if so-and-so suffering, and what's odd is he makes the example of, well, there have been babies that have survived, but there have been babies that haven't. But he's not the arbiter. He's not, we're not here to play God.
Yeah.
And, it kind of makes sense that he would file this after going up there and practically endorsing physician-assisted suicide in regards to a baby. So why wouldn't he support physician-assisted suicide in regards to someone near the end of their life?
Yeah, it's fascinating because, he is a member of the Republican Party, and this is the, really low-hanging fruit, this pro-life issue. I mean, it's this most serious issue we face, but it is something that generally we all agree on. And when he went down to talk against Senator Rapert's bill that would ban abortion in Arkansas in the event Roe versus Wade is overturned, he maintained he was speaking against it because it goes too far. He maintained that he was still pro-life. Like you said, Ken, there are babies who are diagnosed with this, that, or the other that are told that, they're not going to survive, but then they do survive. Then there are also miracles that happen, I believe. And so under Dan Douglas's, I guess, in his opinion, we're just going to discount the possibility that a miracle can actually happen and a baby can survive and live a normal life.
Yeah, and let's make it clear. I mean, people want to throw around the term pro-life, and in this instance, in Representative Douglas' instance, he needs to understand that when you say that you're pro-life, that means you protect life from conception to natural death. And in both instances now, he does not fit that mold.
Wow. Yeah, that's you're exactly right. Natural death, not assisted suicide. Let me just see. Do I have the bill pulled up here? I have it. Yeah, I have it here. It is HB 1536, an act to create the Compassionate Care End of Life Opinion Act. Now, this is I know we keep going to Dan Douglas going down to the well. He had a personal story of I guess his niece who was pregnant, who had a tough pregnancy, but he kept saying things like we need to be pro-humanity when it comes to taking the life. And so it seems that to me is not humanity at all. I mean, I guess I've never seen a Republican be so completely 180 degrees off of what the mainstream of their party is.
Yes, I mean this is not pro-humanity. This is just honestly and fundamentally disrespectful towards innocent human life. I mean, it's just disrespectful. There's no other way to say it. This bill is honestly is worse than terrible. It's within the title, it legalizes physician-assisted suicide.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, it legalizes euthanasia in Arkansas. It legalizes what Jack Kevorkian was put in jail for.
Good grief. You are exactly right. And it says here it's an act to create the Compassionate Care End-of-Life Option Act to exempt prescribing or dispensing of a medication for self-administration by a patient under the Compassionate Care End-of-Life Option Act from the definition of physician-assisted suicide. Mm-hmm. So, and I've been I saw a few media reports on this, and they're not using the term assisted suicide from what I can tell. And I feel like that's key here because most people know what assisted suicide is and they're against it.
Yes, correct. And it's just unfortunate, and, we have sometimes there's some liberal media outlets that obviously support physician-assisted suicide because the states that do have it are typically in the West Coast, like Oregon, Hawaii, California, and this bill is even worse than some of those states that do have physician-assisted suicide.
Oh, my goodness. So, obviously, this bill is, you would think, going to go down in flames. But I don't know. When Dan Douglas presents this bill, is he going to have, I would presume, stories of people who are older, who suffered and wanted to die but weren't allowed to die, weren't allowed to take their lives? Is that what's going to happen? Or I hope there's some motion that's made to just immediately consider this, or a motion do not pass or something. It needs to just not even be. It's a waste of time to even bring this up.
Yeah, this deserves. For those that don't know how committee works at the Capitol, the worst thing that can happen to your bill is the motion do not pass, and this honestly deserves that. But I think you'll have stories, but the American Family Association has already come out against this bill, and I think there are people in the palliative care community that are looking at it, and some that not all of them, but some will probably come out and be against it, and you're practically changing the profession of doctors.
Mm-hmm.
That you're supposed to. I talked to a state rep the other day. I said, are we really ready to have doctors where you go in when you're towards the end of your life thinking, ooh, is this doctor really trying to cure me and heal me? Or is this doctor trying to kick me down the road as quickly as possible and put me to death?
Mm-hmm.
That's the route we're going. And I don't want to have a doctor where I'm wondering, am I, costing the doctor way too much money and affecting their bottom line?
Listen to this. We're talking with Ken Yang. He's the Director of Governmental Affairs for the Family Council. You can find out more at familycouncil.org. Matter of fact, I'm reading an article that's up at familycouncil.org right now, headline, Assisted Suicide Legislation Filed in Arkansas. One part of this article, Ken, under HB 1536, Christian hospitals, hospices, and healthcare facilities would not be able to stop doctors who work for them from prescribing suicide drugs to their patients. Is that true?
Correct. There's no provision currently in the bill as is that lets hospitals, hospices, or any other healthcare facility to prohibit their employees from taking part in physician-assisted suicide.
Wow. Well, it should be dead on arrival, but I just couldn't believe this. Listen, State Representative Dan Douglas is a really colorful guy, and but. For 2 weeks in a row, he speaks against a bill to outlaw abortion in Arkansas, which is what Arkansas's Constitution prescribes, if Roe versus Wade is overturned. And then he files an assisted suicide. To me, this is a story because this is something that, Republicans obviously can disagree on tax increases. In my opinion, they shouldn't, but they clearly are. It's something that happens, right? But they don't really disagree on being pro-life, from what I have found. We're the second most pro-life state in the nation, and so for a Republican to come out and speak against and then file assisted suicide so you can kill old people, it's just mind-boggling to me, Ken.
And look, and if you delve into the bill itself, once the prescription of the drugs has been approved, there only needs to be that the actual patient doesn't have to be the one to pick it up from the pharmacist. It can be anyone that's determined to be associated with the patient that go picks it up from the pharmacist. And so who's to say what are they going to do with that prescription? We hear horror stories all the time on the West Coast of people going to pick up that prescription, and the patient changes their mind and like, well, nope, sorry, and they put them to death. But there's just so many. It's just bad in general, but this thing is worse than any bill that you've seen around the country. And I've been on their show a lot. I'm typically more jovial, more just happy in general. But this is honest. This honestly makes me angry that someone who's a Republican, because I'm a Republican, would file something this egregious.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I think the entire state, or the entire Republican Party, with the exception of State Representative Dan Douglas, would agree. So anyway, Ken Yang with Family Council, really appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us this morning and shedding light on this important issue that needs to be this needs to be killed, no pun intended, immediately.
Yes, and we're going to do our best to do so.
All righty. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
All righty. You can find that article, folks. It's up at familycouncil.org. And Ken, it's always great to have Ken on the program. I just can't believe that. I mean, my goodness. It's unbelievable. It's just it's one of those things that is mind-boggling. I mean, you think, okay, we have some Republicans that can't agree on what's the proper, tax policy. Tax hikes should be bad, but we're going to hike taxes. You wouldn't think they would disagree on this, but I guess there's always one. There's always one in every group, I guess. Anyway, just wild stuff. Hey, did you hear about this real quick? Jussie Smollett. I mean, I know you've heard about Jussie. I know you know at this point. But the update is that he feels betrayed. He feels so betrayed, and he says that he's innocent. Talk about doubling down. We're talking about a psychosis at this point. Listen, I know he's guilty or innocent until proven guilty. I understand. Innocent until proven guilty. But the two Nigerians on camera buying the stuff, have you seen these two Nigerians? They no, I mean, they're huge. They are absolutely humongous. They look like they look so big, like they look like the guys that you would pick off of the street. I don't know if you remember the 1980s cartoon Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but those would be the kind of guys who'd be like Bebop and Rocksteady. You guys are perfect for the mutant transformation that we're about to do, because you're just gonna, like, he picked these two giant guys. They're unmistakable. Like, there's not a whole lot of people who are Nigerian bodybuilders. I mean, they're incredibly shredded, if you will. And so they're going up to the store and they're buying the ski masks and everything else. It's pretty open and shut at this point. And the Chicago police, I don't know if you saw the captain's response. I mean, he was pretty upset about this, I think, because you're wasting all these resources. And the captain himself is black. And so he's pretty fired up about this whole thing. And then you find out that he was making $65,000 an episode, and that was not enough. And he was doing all of this, according to the story, he's doing all of this to he's doing all of this so he can get more money. That's the official narrative. That's the official narrative. I don't know, though. There may be something more to it than that. To me, the whole thing seemed like I think Jussie Smollett, he put the Nigerians up to it. I'm not so sure if somebody didn't put Jussie up to it. I don't think you can't rule that out. Look, you can go online and you can find Jussie Smollett with Kamala Extract Harris and all these other Democrats. Look, and the idea that Trump supporters are racist and everything else, it was right after Covington. It was right after they were trying to indict that kid for being white. They're suing for $250 million. But you had, the Covington kid who was white wearing a MAGA hat at the Lincoln Memorial at a pro-life rally, and that's why he was guilty, and the media had egg all over their face. Right before that, they had egg all over their face with the BuzzFeed story where the Mueller debunked it. He came out and said that's not accurate. Trump did not tell his attorney to lie to Congress. They had egg all over their face. And, and Trump supporters are found to not be racist like everybody says, so their narrative's debunked. And then what happens? Oh, we have a lynching in Chicago at 2 a.m. with a bunch of people waiting with nooses, with two guys waiting with a noose and bleach. And we now, and according to this headline over at Drudge, Jussie Smollett sent a letter to himself. First of all, if the feds get involved here, you're looking at mail fraud. It's not even mail fraud. I heard somebody say the other day, he's looking at mail fraud because he sent a fake letter to himself. If you read reports, it was ground up aspirin. Folks, if you try to send someone anthrax in the mail, even if you're sending it to yourself, real or fake, we're looking at a lot higher charges than we're now talking about terrorism. We're beyond mail fraud at that point. And now I understand the mail fraud. The post office is allegedly post office is pretty vicious when they go after somebody. But anyway, this whole story, man, I think there's more to the story than we know even now. I'm not quite ready to buy the official story because the media lies anyway. I'm not ready to buy the official story that he did all of this because he wanted a $65,000 an episode salary increased. Just a thought. Tell me what you think the motive really was. 870-275-9799.
Based on his congratulations to him for having more women in Congress than ever before. They couldn't clap for World War II veterans. They couldn't clap for America, but they could stand up and clap for themselves. And I found it ironic that the person they loathed the most had them up clapping and cheering and chanting USA.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting as well. Generally, I also thought...
You brought up...
go ahead.
Well, you brought up the president's comments on life, and that's probably the strongest words I've ever heard from a president that I can remember on the sanctity of life. And to me, that was a highlight of his speech.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how all children reflect the holy image of God. I agree. I don't think I've ever heard that from a president.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of them that have believed that in the past, and it was just kind of understood in society, I think. But I'm glad that he reminded us of that and reminded the nation and the world of that in the State of the Union.
Congressman Bruce Westerman, I appreciate the work you're doing, sir, and it's always a pleasure to have you on the program, and we'll talk to you again soon, okay?
Yeah, wait till you hear about the new Green Deal. Oh, my goodness.
Right. Yeah, that's a gift. Yeah. I think that's a gift to Republicans, actually.
Yeah, it's actually scary because they're moving the bar so far that it's going to make things that would have seemed nuts not quite as nutty because that is so nutty.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
All
right. Well, we appreciate it, sir.
All right. I hear a little Johnny Cash coming in the background.
Yeah. We're full circle.
Firearms
all right, Congressman Bruce Westman,
be safe. Of the most
folks, we're going to take a break.
Firearms in the world. These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799.
What happened? You used to go hours without visiting the bathroom. Now it seems like you're constantly getting up to pee, and you're even getting up at night to go. This is not okay. Listen, the makers of Super Beta Prostate, the #1 prostate formula, are introducing a new wonder pill, Super Beta Prostate P3 Advanced, with 3 key ingredients that are great for your prostate. It's like taking 3 prostate supplements in one. To celebrate, we're sending free bottles to men who want to cut down on bathroom trips. Yes, your first 30-day supply is free. Pay shipping and handling. Call 1-800-253-2181.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back to the program. We've got Congressman Rick Crawford on the line. Rick, it's always great to have you on, sir. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you doing?
We're doing really good. On Wednesday, we covered the State of the Union that the president gave Tuesday, and I have to tell you, I was just thoroughly pleased with his speech.
Yeah, I tell you, I think that this may be one of those sort of defining.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, on this Johnny Cash Friday. We're winding things down here. We really appreciate it. Headline. Here's a few of your headlines. ConduitNews.com. Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson signs trigger abortion law. He signed the trigger abortion ban bill into law, which would make abortion automatically illegal in Arkansas should Roe v. Wade be overturned by the Supreme Court of the United States. This is fantastic. This is a huge victory for the state of Arkansas in anticipation. Arkansas as a state collectively has moved on a good path. The governor signing this law is a good thing, and we should be very thankful that he signed this. We should be very thankful that the Arkansas legislature did this. New York, Virginia, other places are anticipating Roe v. Wade being overturned, and they are making abortion even more legal and accessible to kill babies who are almost ready to come out of the womb, and in some cases afterwards. Arkansas is trying to say we don't want to have abortion here. There are two distinct positions when juxtaposed. Other headline: we have banned herbicide dicamba has now been approved in Arkansas. The Arkansas Plant Board has voted in favor of a set of rules for the usage of the herbicide dicamba in Arkansas. From April 16th through October 31st, dicamba has been temporarily banned after farmers complained that the herbicide was drifting onto crops and causing damage. Under these set of rules, dicamba will not be allowed to be used within a half a mile of research stations, organic crops, and specialty crops. Use of dicamba will be allowed through May 25th. Legislators will now vote on the plant board's decision. In other news, again, probably the biggest news, we have the highway tax hike plan, a highway plan that has tax increases in the bill, easily passed the Senate yesterday. The vote was a vote of 27-8. Of course, this is something that now heads to the House of Representatives, will be heard in the House Revenue and Taxation Committee on Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. So, those are some of your headlines. Do we have anything else? Let's see here. Oh, yeah, you need to check this article out if you want some good reading over the weekend. It's kind of a follow-up to the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Arkansas Democrat-Gazette article that talked about the leaders in reimbursements for per diem and mileage if you are a Arkansas state legislator. This headline: legislators receive huge expense payments, much for no good reason. I'll have more on this on Monday We'll be here Monday, 6:05, with bells on, bringing you the latest news over the weekend, as well as continuing coverage of the 92nd General Assembly. Everything that goes on at the Marble Palace, we want to let you know about. Arkansas, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for starting the beginning of your weekend with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. My name is Paul Harrell. Arkansas, be safe.